Welcome to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blain. I interview leaders, experts and business professionals from around the world who are bringing leadership principles and know-how into the digitally driven 21st century workplace, with focus firmly on the how-to rather than the what. Each episode is in aid of a charity chosen by my guests, and since 2020, we've made donations to over 80 global and local causes. Welcome to the Rethink Leadership podcast with my guest, Eric D. Stone. Eric's passion for business led into an influential 26-year career at the iconic rental car company Enterprise Holdings, where he quickly became one of the most decorated regional VPs in the company's history. He attributes much of this success to his ability to create, ignite, and sustain a high-performance culture, along with an extraordinary ability to adapt to the unexpected and help others do the same. We discuss Eric's expertise in building winning workplace cultures, what that entails, and how to accelerate progress in any organization, regardless of size or situation. I also find out more about his book on the topic, Jumpstart Your Workplace Culture. We've made a donation to the Social Impact Partners of Connecticut as a thank you to Eric for joining us. Please find out more and get involved with this great cause at socialimpactpartners.org. Eric, thanks very much for joining me. Please introduce yourself, your business, and your passions.
Okay, well, Eric Stone. I was in corporate America for almost 30 years with a company called Enterprise Holdings, which recently changed to Enterprise Mobility. Had an opportunity to grow with an amazing company and went from being a party of 4 in one office to having a chance to lead a few hundred employees. And after a while, I said, you know what? I'd love to be able to impact even more people. So I decided to create an outline for a book. Took me a few years to do. Created a book on workplace culture. And now I have the chance to tell everybody about a practical roadmap to create and ignite on high performance. And so I ended up creating a company called Clear Path Ventures, which guides people, individuals or companies, to create a clear path to success.
Well, I have to say congratulations for the book, Jumpstart Your Workplace Culture. That clearly mixed a passion for people with what you were doing in your day job, and then thought, I can do it for 100, I could do it for 1,000, I could do it for more, right? Is that how it sort of evolved?
That's it. I always had a passion for leadership. I always was enamored by what do sports organizations or business organizations do to create this special thing, something that becomes contagious, where they have sustained excellence over an extended period of time. And so, yeah, leadership and engagement and workplace culture have been a big passion of mine for a few decades.
And what a combination, leadership with workplace culture. So before we get into that, I'd like to take you out a little bit, because you are now a known champion for building winning workplace cultures. So why, from your perspective, with all of that you see out there, Eric, is it even more important in the transformational era, the fast-paced world we're living in, to think and act around culture?
Well, I think ever since the pandemic, it's been put front and center. And so you have now 5 generations in the workplace, and each generation values different aspects of what's important to them in their workplace environment. Some value of course, the younger generations might value a purpose-driven work. Others might be driven by money. But how do you create this melting pot? It's put it front and center with 5 generations there. You better do something. And then, of course, the flexibility debate. So should organizations be in-person, remote, and hybrid? And so they've got to navigate what is best for not only their employees, but their customers. And this has put a strain on overall engagement, which is a huge part of workplace culture. So I think those two things have certainly put it front and center in the global environment right now.
And that, it just struck me as you were talking about there, and maybe it's a bit unfair to throw this on at you, Eric, but one of the big trends also hitting our workforce at the moment is the increased impact of independent workers as a formalized part of the workforce of any organization, now working hand in hand beyond managed services with permanent employees. How is that starting to impact culture build or culture break?
I mean, I always use a framework. And so whether you're whatever sector you're in, you're a startup, a very tenured business, I always felt that there just was an approach you should use. These there are timeless principles, however you're trying to navigate some choppy waters. And so I actually always tell these organizations, I call it an hourglass approach that helps everybody try as a framework to build this unique special sauce. And I'll try to see if I can get it while I'm talking on screen, if it doesn't blur that. But it's called the hourglass approach. And let's see if we can get it up here for those who are checking from the video side. And so organizations, you'll see the top. Well, first of all, it's called hourglass for a reason. It's our O-U-R. It brings everybody together as you're navigating. And the first phase is this discovery, this listen, observe, and learn mentality that you're pulling from your stakeholders, board members, customers, clients, whoever it may be. And so anybody can kind of do that, whether you're 1 or 100. And so as you go through the discovery, you go next to the orchestrate, and it comes out a little bit. You're now thinking of those, I call them big rock items, that are those priorities that are important to your organization that must be administered throughout. You're synthesizing all that feedback as you orchestrate into the rollout. This is the 3 to 5 things that you want everyone to be aware of. Everyone will know it a little bit differently based on your tenure and experience. And as you now have clarity, it then bottles out. You now have to go, depending on how many people you have within your organization, you have to reinforce the message. You have to do that through review writing. Maybe it's the training process and things like that. And then once you do all that, there's an assessment stage where you're going to kind of take a good look, however you assess, whether it's surveys, pulse surveys, engagement surveys, looking at the raw numbers. And once you think you have it, Jeremy, things tend to happen, right? And that's when you turn that hourglass over and figure out where within that process, based on what you're doing, you do. You'll notice there's 2 really pillars on each side that are going to guide your decision making, the mission, vision, and values of the organization, of course, and those policies and procedures. And those are going to guide the decisions that you and your organization will do. And so no matter who you are, how many people you lead, it's a simplified visual thing that allows people to truly understand what you're trying to do.
And it comes across well. So for those of you who aren't on YouTube, just to reinforce, imagine an hourglass: discovery at the top, assessment at the bottom. You've got the orchestrate right through to the rollout and into all of those bits that Eric was talking about around the training, mission, vision, and values on the left pillar, and you've got policies and procedures on the right pillar. So I really get the clarity of that model. And following what I was just talking about there as well, very relevant for a blended workforce as much as just a permanent only workforce, right?
Absolutely. That's the beauty of a simplified visual process.
It certainly is. And so if I fast forward a little bit, and you've been working with many organizations around this, so what are those organizations who are winning the culture race, if you like, the culture evolution race, doing differently to those who are still struggling to accelerate?
I think they focus on, in my opinion, 5 critical things. I think the first is they build a strong relationship within their organization. So every layer who's reporting to somebody has an ability to build strong relationships. As many know, the number one reason people leave organizations is because of a dissatisfaction with their manager. And so what do you do from the hiring to the onboarding to the training? What are the initiatives you have that build strong relationships? They're really good at that, which builds, of course, the most important thing, trust. So if you want unique results, you better have unique relationships. That's number one. Number 2, they're very clear with their expectations and goals throughout the organization. They balance the how often we're going to do something with the what setting that we're going to do it. And they know how to either amplify, buffer, or convey the message. I call them the ABCs of communication. Third is the right material, equipment, and information in order to get the desired outcome. They find a great way to coach and develop their individuals. They'll do need assessments. They'll do pre and post homework assignments before the training. They'll have a variety of things that allow people to execute the strategies that we're trying to do. The fourth would be they encourage personal and professional growth. So they have personal goals that are set individually as well as professional. And you're unlocking that individual's potential inside and out of work. And the last one, they find a great balance of rewarding top performance. And so they balance the right number with the diversity of the awards, and they put this together and have a good idea based on the other four factors of what is something that's going to drive the right behaviors.
Oh, I really like that, Eric. And I particularly like that clarity of starting, but then getting that reward and recognition at the end as that strong backup there to catch people doing it right when you've set these new expectations. But I particularly like your ABC, I have to say, amplify, buffer, and convey that messaging. What a great piece of advice that is for everybody, regardless of what you're looking at within business, and understanding the type and cadence of communication that you need at any one time. I really like that. Thank you very much. I have made a note of that and will no doubt repeat it this week at some point, Eric, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So, I'm going to put you on the spot now because that's great. And it intuitively, that means you're making progress. So, what are the measurable benefits of getting that right? And particularly going back to those that aren't making that progress, what's the cost of lagging or not making any progress in this area?
I got a lot of this information from Gallup. And
Yeah.
so when I will do keynote talks and things like that, I think data is really, really important. You've got to pull, especially nowadays with OpenAI and all the stuff that you can pull throughout. But they had an interesting stat about the impact of overall engagement. And it was interesting. It was those who are in the top quartile of their rankings compared to those in the bottom quartile had business outcomes in a few key areas that were astounding. Number one, they had a 10% increase in customer satisfaction and loyalty if you're in the top quartile. They had an 18% increase in sales productivity. Powerful, powerful number. They had a 23% increase in overall profits. Again, another powerful number. And another one that stood out for me was an 81% reduction in absenteeism. So very interesting of why are people actually calling out sick today? So those are a few of the things that lead. So engagement tends to lead to some of those strong business outcomes. At least the data tells us that. Now the cost is really mind blowing. Globally, it costs the workforce $9 trillion. That is nine with a T. That is 12 zeros after the nine. It is 9% of the global GDP. And so that, if that doesn't wake you up on the importance of overall engagement, I don't know what will. And then even if you're a small operator, you might only have 10 people, but there is a cost of losing individuals, that retention number that usually senior leaders are going to want to hear. And that could be between 6 and 9 months of their overall salary of that to replace that individual. So there's a great benefit and there is a great cost of not keeping attention to those things that really matter.
There most certainly is. That $9 trillion, the cost of a lack of engagement, that in my very rough estimation puts lack of engagement as one of the top 4 economies of the world, or thereabouts, which is
That's right.
frightening. So yeah, big levers to pull, as you say, and they could already see with the percentages that you shared, Eric, how it's not just one lever, and I'm sure it's not just those 4 levers as well. Each one of those can multiply each other as well, and it's no wonder when you've got that reduction in absenteeism, a positive engagement in the business internally and externally, those are the benefits are going to come. That's a great piece of data there. Thank you very much.
Oh, you got it. Oh, go ahead. Well, I was going to say, another unique thing about when I compare workplace culture to a lot of things, when I define it, it's these behaviors in action. But the powerful thing is the behaviors that happen and exist when leaders aren't in the room is really a good way of understanding this workplace culture. Very similar to personal brand, actually, which is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So it's kind of this parallel of branding and culture, but a very good way when you're explaining, because sometimes it's this nebulous word that people really don't know how to quantify and measure. So hopefully that'll help.
That's absolutely right, and I'm sure those listening will be thinking, right, how do I get going on this? So let me come to you, the expert, Eric, on this. So how do you work with organizations to help them fast track their efforts and some of these things that we've been talking about so that they can see progress being made and measure that from day one?
I think the easiest exercise I always start with is usually helping organizations design a true engagement strategy.
Mm.
And so the simplest thing is we talked about those 5 factors in the beginning. And under each factor, Jeremy, it's really important that you now bring in 3 things you're going to do. And it doesn't have to be 3, but I like to start with 3 things under each one of those factors that you can now embrace throughout the entire organization and align everything. I think that's a big starting point. I think you really like the ABCs of communication. I think it really is important that when I work with organizations and you just say, what are your 3 to 5 key priorities? It's interesting how many varies you get from what they think is really the most important to what they're really trying to get to. So it really is in that little part of the hourglass where your clarity is there, is just working on step 1, engagement strategy. Step 2, let's make sure these, what I call big rock items, are being hit and understood. And I really love looking at the simplicities of the hiring process. I love to look at what are the questions we ask for said position. Are we training individuals who are leading these interviews? Have we trained them on unconscious biases and things like that? But what are we doing with the training? Do we assess the training of the organization? Do the training material align with the 3 to 5 key priorities that exist within the organization? So those are just a few things. The best exercise is the designing of engagement. And I'll throw a bonus coverage for you, Jeremy. Under the values that are listed with any organization, which they all have, of course, the goal is, of course, to live them. And under each value, I like to assign 3 key behaviors that show what we mean by this value, because honesty and integrity, what it means to you might be a little different than it means to me. And most organizations might use that one. So a bunch of little exercises that people can do to really dig in.
And that's really important, with values and behaviors being really the pivot or the lever to drive high impact culture. And you are right, interpretation, you want from day one everybody with that clarity, hence your hourglass, hence those 3 priorities that you're talking about. So if there are those that buy into what you've just said there, what are the 2 or 3 steps that they can take now just to start the process if they've done none of this before?
Well, again, the beauty of the hourglass. I mean, you just follow it. So to me, it's always about that listen, observe, and learn piece. I think it's, especially being an outsider at times when you're coming into an organization, but if you're doing it yourself, it is powerful when you have some sort of one-on-one throughout a variety of levels and you're pulling the stuff. Honestly, Jeremy, I'd go right to the hourglass. That's what they can utilize for, again, a framework that might be beneficial to get it through all levels. And that's where usually the skip happens, is you talk to mid-level or lower level and it's a little disconnected and they need it figured out how to be that, I call it the distraction catcher to bring clarity. I would use that model.
And I thought you had mentioned it, but I will definitely mention it for you, is that get into Eric's book, Jumpstart Your Workplace Culture, because this is a step-by-step guide leading them through that, isn't it, Eric?
It is exactly what we talk about. I think the number one thing I guide people on is to say, hey, what's your major initiative and how do you ensure it goes to all levels? And I'll share a quick story, if it's okay, Jeremy, on what I mean that'll balance everything we talked about. And I could pick a variety of different examples, but I'll use the Johnny the Bagger story that tends to be the most popular one. And this is a young man who was a bagger who proudly informed the consultant who was trying to give advice that he had Down syndrome. And at first, he didn't know how he could truly impact this grocery store chain. And wow, was he wrong? He could. And so what he ended up doing is, I used that model when our customer service was struggling and it was going into a peak season. We pulled the Johnny the Bagger video out because we wanted to demonstrate what the right behavior was. So Johnny not only put a thought of the day as he was bagging his groceries, his line ended up getting 3 times as long because everyone wanted to get Johnny's thought of the day. And so the store manager was all panicky about this excessively long line until the customers started to say, Mr. Manager, don't worry, we're waiting for Johnny's thought of the day. So all of a sudden, things start to transform within the organization because Johnny chooses to make a difference, but it doesn't stop there. Then the floral department wants to kind of jump in on this, and any broken flower or unused corsage, they would walk around the store and they would pin it to some of the customers who were shopping, a young child, an older adult, and all of a sudden the store was transformed. Well, we took this amazing story and we said, let's now bring this in to show what the behaviors look like to change a customer service experience. It would now be part of the new hire training, Jeremy. It would then go into the earlier trainings. It would then be included in the review process where are you living the Johnny the Bagger mentality? It didn't stop there. It became part of the recognition where you would have weekly meetings of customer service to point out who was living the Johnny the Bagger moment. And so all of a sudden, every layer understood what it meant. And it's a way that you can have fun, story tell, use behaviors that truly get people to understand what you're talking about and get a great outcome in it.
Wow, well, I've got the ABCs and now I've got Johnny the Bagger for this week. It's great. My challenge is to put these into conversations this week. I'm going to come back to you, but that for me is empowered customer service culture evolution from the ground up, and how it can meet in the middle with everybody involved. And isn't that a great way to end this? And I'm sure those tuning in will want to find out more, connect with you to continue the discussion, and grab your book. How do they do all that?
So you to grab the book, you can go to Amazon. You can go at a Barnes and Noble or a bookstore near you. It's been at all the Barnes and Nobles, at least in North America. And if you want to get a hold of me, you could just go on LinkedIn. Is probably the best platform that I'm on. So LinkedIn there. Thanks to my daughter, just got on Instagram a little bit. So it's Clear Path Ventures _. But those are probably the two best.
Great. Well, Eric, it's been such a joy to talk to you. Your enthusiasm for the topic comes across. It's something so important to evolving organizations and the speed of change that we're in, and putting culture at the heart of everything is exactly what we need to do, and a big challenge for leaders. So thank you so much for joining me.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for letting me share to your audience.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blain. Please like, comment and support us on your favourite platform, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch as well as listen to each episode.